Hello, I'm Jonathan Stouter. I'm the game director on Life is Strange Double Exposure.
And I'm Felice Kwan. I'm the narrative director.
Where in the Life is Strange timeline does this take place, and how long has Max been working at the university?
This is many years after the first game, and Max is working at the university. She's been here just a couple days in October, and so she just arrived this summer and got used to it.
So Moses plays a big role in the section of the game that we just played. Tell me about Moses. How is his role as the third friend a critical component in the story?
So Moses is the friend that, along with Max, discovered Safi's body. And he's actually someone that Max only knows because of Safi. So at the very beginning of the game, they don't know each other that well. But over the course of grieving Safi and then potentially investigating her death, they'll grow a lot closer. Moses is a physicist, and so his scientific knowledge will prove quite useful when Max starts to think about her powers and maybe consider confiding in somebody about them for the first time in years.
Also, Safi's relationship with Moses, closeness with him, means that he is basically the epicenter of the differences that start to reverberate through the timelines after Safi's died. And so you see a lot of change and differences between the timelines with the different versions of Moses that you interact with.
So nobody can ever really be ready to be in Max's situation where, her friend was just murdered, but how does her past experience help guide her through this story?
I think it's really complicated for Max, and that's kind of at the heart of the story. Max very deliberately wanted to put her trauma behind her. At the beginning of the story, she's trying to have a very normal life. So I agree with you. She herself is not prepared. But I think that part of what we love about this story is that Max needs to look at what happened to her. She needs to confront some of those demons, and so Safi's murder forces her to do so. And she can't run away anymore.
So shifting between two timelines is a big part of the story experience and looks to affect dialogue across both of those timelines. How has the shift mechanic helped you with writing dialogue and with designing puzzles?
Right, so thanks to shifting, you have access to two versions of every character you interact with. And those two versions of one character can be very, very different from one another. And so that gives you a lot of different opportunities to explore different facets of each major character you're interacting with rather than what just one timeline would have given us access to. In terms of game design, we have more mechanical puzzles than I think prior installments of the series, requiring you to think logically about how to shift, where to shift, and use that to navigate locked doors, obstacles, NPCs that won't give you the answers you need.
Narratively, I think the franchise is known for the complexity of its characters, the depth. Good people have bad traits, etc. And so what's really fun about two timelines is Max will get to see the best, the worst of different people and interact directly with them. It was quite complicated to write, and there were times when we messed up, and then we realized, Max is a pro at her powers, but she's a human being as well, and sometimes she gets confused too, and so that's in the game as well.
So you can't shift everywhere. There are certain points in the world where you can shift, but were there any challenges in placing these shift points to make sure that they work with the game's logic puzzles?
Yeah, so that was an important part of level design, puzzle design, was figuring out where the most appropriate places would be to position these shift spots. We also took into account narratively, we don't want people to obviously be seeing Max shift and use these powers out in the open, and so we've made our best effort to then also accommodate not breaking the narrative and having her, say, shifting in the middle of a crowded room where 50 people would see her powers get used.
So we meet Detective Alderman in this section that we just played. How much of him do we see in the story, and how does Max's relationship with him affect the murder case?
I will leave it for spoilers for how much he plays a role in the story and what role exactly that is. However, he's a pretty good detective, and so he initially comes on to investigate Safi's death, but Max herself becomes quite interesting to him as well.
So as we saw at the end of our session that we just played, Max appears to still be discovering the extent of her powers. How much of her power is she unfamiliar with?
So, right, where you pick up in this scene, she's spent a few hours understanding and getting used to the basics of her new power, but then in a moment of heightened stress, she discovers another aspect that allows her to move those big objects between timelines. And that will be something that will continue as the stakes increase, the stress on Max increases. We'll see her find ways to increase her power usage. Maybe not in like developing yet a fourth power, but doing bigger, more spectacular things with the powers that she's got now.
In addition to the mechanical aspect, while Max gets better at using her powers, she doesn't fundamentally understand why they've changed. And part of the story is her questioning that and wondering about it, especially after she's tried not to use her power, and why exactly those powers evolved is at the core of the mystery.
And one last question. We're celebrating the 10th anniversary of Life is Strange with Double Exposure. And when we first played Life is Strange 10 years ago, it was an episodic story, and subsequent installments were episodic, and then suddenly it went to all-in-one. And Double Exposure is going to be another all-in-one story. Was there any consideration to going back to an episodic format for this?
Not explicitly, but we do have the early access period. So for folks who still enjoyed that episodic approach, if you want to, October 15th, be able to play episodes 1 and 2, and then 2 weeks later on the 29th, get all the other episodes delivered along with folks who didn't pre-order. You can still get a little bit of that episodic experience and have that like little bit of water cooler time to discuss and theory craft between episodes.